Welcome back to another episode of the Vet Worthwhile podcast. I am James Yost, partner and wealth advisor at Signature FD, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Travis York, owner of 3-1 Advisors. Travis, how are you?
I'm doing great today, James. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. We are back with another episode of the Vet Worthwhile podcast, recording live from the Signature FD studios in Midtown Atlanta. Travis, how are you, buddy?
Doing well, James. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's fall.
I'm missing being virtual, not doing this in studio.
Yeah, I know. You're missing quite the view. It's a beautiful day out there today, probably 70 degrees. We had a little stint of winter, then we're right back in the fall season, which is awesome. Football, all that stuff.
How upset are you that your Bulldogs are number 2 behind Ohio State?
I like it. Well, first of all, the rankings mean literally nothing at this stage of the year. It only helps us, only motivates the guys. I do think it's interesting how, you're not going to put the defending national champion, haven't lost a game in 25 plus games, and take them off the number 1 seed. But that's okay. That's for another day. We'll get into that later on another episode.
I mean, I hate to say, you're kind of starting to sound like an Alabama fan that you should just be given the national championship since you showed up.
Oh boy. No, that might be the worst insult we've ever had in our history. We'll have to figure it out where we go from here if we can recover. So let's segue right into the content then for the folks. Who are we talking to today, Travis? What do we got going on?
We're excited. We've got a longtime veterinary industry partner, friend, Jimmy Dorough. Jimmy is been a good friend of mine for many years. He works with Patterson and serves. I don't know how many hospital owners do you serve in the Atlanta market, Atlanta metro market, Jimmy?
Probably call it 100 plus or minus, something like that.
So we're excited to have Jimmy because he is in and out of hospitals talking to team members and hospital owners day in and day out. And I'm not sure that there's anybody that has a better pulse on the feel of the industry than the guys that are out there interfacing with the people who are running the hospitals every day. So Jimmy, excited to have you on.
Appreciate you guys having me, Trav. Thank you.
Well, I tried to tee you up, but I'm not sure I hit everything you've done in your veterinary career. Do you mind just sharing with our listeners what you're doing now, how you got there, and maybe what other hats you've worn along the way?
Sure. Well, I have to say it's hard being an Auburn man living in the state of Georgia for the last, 16, 20 years. But I stumbled into the veterinary industry in 2008 by way of being a client and just started looking around this vet hospital and realized there was something there and started asking a few questions and networking. So I've been in the industry since 2008, started out as a manufacturer for Abbott Laboratories, and then shortly thereafter, I found my way into distribution, which is more of a relational type role, consultative selling type deal. And I've spent most of my 15 years in distribution, currently with Patterson. I've been with Patterson probably a total of 11 years. And then I had a short stint with a company called Mission Veterinary Partners, and I learned a ton in that time as some of the consolidation was happening. So, but back here at Patterson, and like you mentioned, it's fun to be, in clinics, in and out every single day, and seeing there's as you guys know, there's probably 100 different ways to practice veterinary medicine. So back in the trenches, and it's a fun place to be. It's been a fun ride for the last 15, 16 years in the business for sure.
No, that's awesome. And that's such an interesting timeline there. And over that time and in all those different roles, I'm sure you've seen just a lot in that time period. And then where we're at today, we've been through a pretty crazy few years, at least on the consolidation space and in the buying and selling the hospitals, but also within the hospitals, just with the demand being so strong, there's some supply issues, the labor issues. Where do you feel like we're at today? Like, are you bullish? Are you bearish on the veterinary industry in general? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, have seen a lot. It was funny. I came into the business during, kind of a recessionary time in 2008, and it was interesting and scary. And since then, I've seen ups and downs and highs and lows. But currently, I'm extremely bullish on the industry. pet owner demand is just continuing to grow and rise, and all the stats, and I'm sure you guys have discussed on the podcast, and everybody is well aware of millennials and pet ownership, and pets living longer lives. And so there's so many different factors that I see every day that have me very bullish and excited about the industry for years and years to come. So, for me as an industry professional and a guy who serves, veterinarians and owners and groups that own hospitals, it's still a really incredible, exciting time. And, as much as we've seen and that I've seen in the way of change in the last 15, 16 years, I still feel like we are on a new horizon and kind of on a, there's a ton of opportunity. So a lot of excitement, and
where
I'm
are you
optimistic on
most
where we're
excited
going.
about opportunity, Jimmy?
I think I thought of this term the other day. If you're a vetrepreneur, or either a veterinarian who's an entrepreneur, or a professional, or someone related to this industry, if you look at, again, those growth trends and the billions of dollars that are spent on, pet healthcare and the pet industry and the vet industry, I mean, there's literally, I think there's so many different paths you could take, and that could be, okay, how do we start fresh today to serve pet owners? It doesn't look like it always has, and it's going to look a lot different in the next 5 to 10 years. And I kind of speak to that from a technology standpoint, from adaptation to how pet owners interact in hospital. There's so much more automation and technology that's been woven in. So I still think it's changing. It does feel like we're in a with the economy and kind of everything, it feels like the industry has softened a hair since the post-COVID pet boom. What they call those guys, COVID puppies. Unfortunately, we saw a lot of COVID puppies and adoptions, mainly adoptions. Some of those went back to shelters, but so some of that boom has definitely worn off. But I guess to answer your question, Trav, there are so many different ways to go about serving pet owners, either just specific to veterinarians and how they want to practice. Do they want to pick a niche or specialize, or, we could go on and on kind of on different rabbit holes of avenues to go, but there's a ton of opportunity to still either start a practice, buy a practice, expand, add a location, or innovate what you're currently doing.
Well, for some folks, I mean, that sounds exciting, and especially for folks with the kind of the growth mindset and the growth attitude. But the counter side of that, I mean, threats that are out there, we've talked about, like the last few years, inflation has been a challenge for pretty much everybody. It touches literally everybody who participates in our economy. Seemed like that was the biggest threat of 2022. 2023, maybe that's evolved. But when you're meeting with hospital owners, what do you see as their biggest threat that people are talking about? And like, what are some of the strategies you're sharing with them to help them build a better business?
That's a good question. Like you said, it is the flip side of it is, I think, with the opportunity to innovate and grow, I think one of the biggest threats is the veterinarians or clinic owners' inability to adapt. We can't keep approaching it like we always have. And I'm sure you all have talked about this on the podcast, but with veterinary shortages, technician shortages, tech assistant, the labor shortage, that's a big threat. Inflation's a big threat. I think if you're not taking a hard look at your business and your practice, and I mean numbers, if you're not doing a deep dive on your business and your practice and looking for ways to be more efficient, and looking at kind of 80-20 lens of, okay, we're only generating 20% of our revenue from 80% of this activity that these staff members are having to be dedicated to. Do we need to continue doing that? Maybe that's boarding. Do we need to tie up valuable time? Do we need to, what can we automate? So if you're looking at a shortage of staff and you need to reallocate what they're doing or how you're doing things, and I think clinics, and I do this when I'm in clinics, I'll stand back in a treatment area and I'll try and keep my big mouth shut, which can be a challenge, but I will sit there and watch. I'll watch what's going on. I'll just kind of be a fly on the wall, and I'll look and see, okay, there are 3 people holding a dog to trim the nails. Obviously, that's a necessary thing to do. Yeah, but how can we do it different? Or, okay, we've got 3 folks standing around, blood analyzers. Should we send more of that out? Do we need to tie those people up? I'm always trying to encourage my clinics to maximize their face time with the pet owner. You learn more, the client's stickier. What can we do to like eliminate some of the work that could be either outsourced, or I was in a clinic this morning, as a matter of fact, they use a cleaning crew. It's funny, I have some clinics that use, and I'm getting down a rabbit hole, so you guys stop me when you need to. But they utilize a cleaning crew at night, and they just had to fire the crew. And I'm a big fan of outsourcing. Just not all sanitation, but general housekeeping, right? But when you're hard up to find technicians or tech assistants or people that put their hands on pets and interface with clients, whether that's a receptionist or whatever, can you hire a cleaning crew to come in at night and take some of the burden off the people that are hard to hire and keep anyway? Yeah. Just some of those things to like, how are we changing? Because if you're not adapting right now, I think there could be big problems down the road.
Well, along that lines of adapting, Jimmy, I mean, I don't know how much this, you get some of this information, in your role with Patterson, but I mean, I know Patterson is kind of regularly introducing new technologies and working with companies that are bringing new technologies to the space. What are some of those technologies out there that create efficiency that you're most excited about?
That's a good question. I'd say mainly in the follow-up kind of zone, and that could be following up. Hey, congratulations, Fluffy's blood work came back. It looks fantastic. I'm seeing some automation in those. You think about vet clinics that are, however many clients are coming in and out, and the follow-up tasks that are being done. Can we revert to text messages? Can we systematize that? So I'd say there's technologies that are client facing. I'd say here's one that's not really, maybe it doesn't hit that mark per se, Travis, but I was in a clinic 2 weeks ago and I met a new staff member. The staff member had just come in and she was really excited, and I met her and we were having a little chat, and I said, hey, welcome aboard. Where'd you come from? And she said, oh, a clinic. I was working in a clinic about 15 minutes from here. And I said, awesome. How did you find these guys? It's one of my favorite hospitals. They have a phenomenal culture. It's just they're booming. They're growing. It's a great place to work. She said, oh, I found them online. I was reading pet owner reviews. And so she found, if you're trying to attract talent, whether you're, mainly hiring folks in your practice, that's getting client reviews, Google reviews that pet owners are leaving the hospital about you and their visit is actually attracting talent. So I think a lot of my clinics I work with have underutilized technology on, Google reviews, being searchable, pet owner facing technologies. And that's not even scratching the surface with other probably innovating technologies that you might have been touching on. But here's one more quick one. We've got a service, and there's some others out there. Our service is called Talkatoo, but this guy came up with an automated, and this isn't a new thing. It's big on the human side, but pet dictation for soap notes or patient record notes. A lot of associates and owners are bogged down in their files, whether it's paper or entering their notes at the end of the day. I mean, when I'm in clinics, I'll look back in the doctor's office and you'll see, veterinarians kind of poring over their laptop or a stack of files because they're having to clean that up from the day. And I mean, there's some folks that stay an hour or two after the practice is closed, just cleaning that stuff up. So that's an area. We could go on and on about some of those.
Jeez.
Yeah,
that's awesome, and it's cool that you can come in and just kind of be an observer and just bring fresh ideas, given how many hospitals you visit, and you really get to see the ins and outs of a diverse set of practices, from the best to the worst in the area, and can share that with the hospital owner. So, love that. So, you already mentioned the consolidation market. We mentioned it earlier. I mean, there's really no two ways getting around that. I mean, obviously, there's been a tremendous amount of consolidation over the past few years and over the past decades or past decade, what are some of the positives that you've seen for the hospitals that remain as a result of that consolidation? Is there anything that you've seen there, anything that you've picked up?
Are you saying, James, the hospitals that have sold or partnered with a big group? What am I seeing, or what am I seeing with those that are still independent?
Either. I mean, if you have any
Okay.
insights on the hospitals that have sold and you've continued to serve, and just what's the transition been like? How's it been productive? Or if there's any kind of competitive advantage maybe for an independent hospital that's nearby a corporate hospital.
Well, that's an interesting question. The first take on, clinics that have partnered with larger groups, it's funny, I've known some of these owners for 15 years. So to see them, and I'll ask them before, during, and after a transition, hey, how's it going? How are you feeling? And I have been able to see a sigh of relief come over many, many faces of former owners who became sellers and are remaining at the practice, as a medical director, or staying on for, just to practice medicine. Some of these guys and gals, you can see physically the stress that was lifted off their shoulders. And it's been really nice to see that, because as you guys know, talking with owners every day, I mean, the business ownership side of owning a hospital is incredibly stressful. So, and that can take its toll sometimes physically on folks. And so it's been neat to see some of those guys and gals have a nice exit, partnered with a good group that they align with, and to now see them on the after side. And I'll, hey man, how you doing? I'm good. I'm just showing up being a vet, and that they haven't had that luxury in maybe 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So that's been
definitely
fun to see,
seen that.
and that, yeah. And, they got to offload a lot of those administrative or business owner tasks, and that it's been fun to see them utilize the benefits and resources that they were promised in what I like to call the dating period, as they're talking to different groups and what the groups are offering. It's fun to see it come to fruition on the back end and just see them, tapping into those resources, especially now with the hiring and firing. I was in a clinic yesterday who, they were describing they've newly partnered with a group. I was asking him how it's going. He said, you know what? It's been a breeze trying to find some staff. I'll submit a requisition and they'll send me candidates. Boom. I don't have to mess with Indeed. I don't have to do a lot of the setting up and lining up people. And so he was really appreciative of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was neat to see and hear. On the independent side, you alluded to if you're down the street, if you're surrounded on four sides by corporately owned hospitals, what's your opportunity or what's your situation as independently owned? And I'd say it's big. I'd say there are some groups and some hospitals that can have an impact on the culture that then impacts the staff, which translates over to the pet owner. And as you see and hear those in your area, you will have staff and then later on pet owners seek you out because it feels a little different. And that, we all know if you're an owner and if you're talking about a transition and maybe partner with a corporate group, as long as everybody's going in eyes wide open, none of these things are going to be a surprise. But if if the experience wasn't as rosy as you were hoping, and things can erode the culture, it will start turning away staff and then pet owners. So as an independently owned practice, being receptive and being different than the culture experience that pet owners and staff are having at the clinic down the street, I think you've got a real opportunity to, whether it's spending more time with the pet owner, maybe you're not as busy as the clinic down the street, maybe the clinic down the street had a business model, they partnered with a group, the group wants to start tweaking the model, and by that, a lot of times I'm talking about raising prices, and boom, it doesn't take 6, 12, 18 months. Clients, depending on how big the jump or shift was, it's like, wait a second, now they're examining their invoice in the parking lot and they might be looking for a new vet. So if you're independently owned and you can keep low overhead and kind of keep an eye on those culture things, then you might be in a great position to pick up some clients and or staff or associates.
Well, and I do think it's interesting, right? Because like as you see the corporates come in, and there's really an effort with the corporates to try to maintain the current culture. Some of the independents, they're closer, the team in the hospital is closer into the community. And so there's just opportunity to read what's going on inside of those communities and just be agile because it's just a smaller structure, I think.
100% agree. Yep. Yep. I totally agree. You're smaller, you're more nimble, and you can make decisions on the spot to adapt and do what you need to do in that community.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you kind of seeing along those lines? Like, I mean, obviously, it was kind of, it's great to hear, you talk about some of your clients who have had, positive experiences in their kind of exit planning and working with some of the different larger groups of hospitals. For your independent hospital owners, what's kind of the general sentiment in the market right now? If you're somebody who is a younger veterinarian thinking about, how you want to build your career path and what those paths are inside of, a larger group of hospitals versus, what we used to see kind of a more traditional acquisition model. What are you hearing as kind of trends from both current hospital owners and their thoughts on exit, as well as, some of the younger doctors? Are they interested in ownership?
That's a good question. I think in this period of, obviously with interest rates and what's gone on in the market, we've seen a slowdown of consolidation, if you will. And I think the slowdown has given us all an opportunity to kind of pause and watch. And I think, as recent as 5-6 years ago, a lot of if you were an owner and you were selling to a corporate group, obviously that's a very private, large decision, and it makes sense that would be kept close to the vest. That's still the case today. But I think because we've seen so many transitions, I think we'd all be hard pressed to, speak with a vet who didn't have a friend, colleague, associate, whatever the case, that had an interaction with a corporate hospital. So now that so many transitions and partnerships have gone on, a lot of the veil has been lifted on the mystery, what the experience will be like. It's like everybody's cards are on the table. So, which is great, because with that in mind, now a lot of these groups, they're not in their infancy stage, and they're, let's go from 10 to 25 to 50 hospitals. We're now in a more mature stage with a lot of the groups, right, and the top groups. So I'd say that the conversations I'm having with owners who have not sold and they're on their own, still rocking and rolling, it's more of an open discussion. It's more of a, hey, what are you seeing out there? What are you hearing out there? And it's less hush hush than it was 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So I think that's good. And because of that, associates, just associate veterinarians or kids coming out of school, like now it's all out there for us all to see and observe. So I think there's still so many great paths forward, whether you're an associate who wants to buy, the doctor's practice that you're currently working for. And because of interest rates and the pause and the slowdown, we've kind of crested over that hill of multiples and all that. I'm seeing more, and I'm kind of helping facilitate more conversations between owners and associates with partnership opportunities, buy-in, or vet-to-vet sales. That's what I'm seeing right now in this level set. But because we've seen so many transactions in the last couple of years, it's just a more, I'd say, open conversation. And of course now, with multiples coming down, I mean, an associate is more viable or in a better position to be able to partner and or purchase outright the practice they work for. And then on the flip side, now there's so much more, upward mobility of, okay, I'm an associate. Maybe I want to go be a medical director at a corporate hospital, and I can pick the big metro city I want to move to. Or, there's still so many avenues. And because veterinarians are in such high demand, whether you're an owner, associate, working at a corporate, you can still kind of write your own ticket on what do I want to do. And that could even mean lifestyle. Like, I want to work Monday through Thursday. I want to work really hard. And then I want to see you again on Monday. I'm out Thursday night. I'll see you on Monday. So there's still a ton of opportunity within the current environment. And because of all the transitions, and now we're in a slower period, I'm still seeing corporate transactions. We're all still seeing it. Obviously it's calmed down, but I feel like we're now in more of a level set. Okay, what path should I take now?
That's super interesting that you say that. When we're out talking to people in the community, you just get a lot of different feedback and a lot of interesting commentary, especially. But to your point, I mean, it's become such a common thing. So many transactions happening that it's like, I don't know how someone who's working in a practice could be super shocked when they hear that there's some movement happening. So maybe that's fostering more communication and more opportunities for people to step up on the inside and say, "Hey, this is probably on your mind. I'd like to engage in a conversation," which is cool. I think that's a good thing. On to just big picture. I mean, right now, the economy has been expanding. Third quarter GDP print was close to 5% annualized net of inflation. Fourth quarter is looking at somewhere around 2%, all looking good. But like the sentiment across the industry or across the economy is really bad. A lot of people are calling it the bad vibes expansion. Are you kind of getting that from the hospital owners that you're working with, or from the staff that you're working with? Like, even though we might be doing good economically, it doesn't feel that way. Like, is that something that's trickling down to that level?
I like that term. I'm going to borrow it. The bad vibes expansion. I think we're seeing, we're seeing, it's hard to tell, James, because I'm seeing, as I'm asking, hey, how's business? How are things? I've seen a softening. The summer was solid. Spring, summer seasons, as you'd expect, are solid, but I saw some slowdown in September, which is typical back to school. So as you guys have I think noted on this podcast before, revenues are still up. Growth is still there. It's more modest, but transactions and or new client, that side is softening. So are we having to increase our prices? And we're not seeing as many patients, but we're still up revenue-wise. I think yes, but it's really hard to distinguish between, are we up and busy, or are we just shorthanded still? I'm seeing a lot of shorthandedness out here. And I think overall, the good news is because of our industry and the folks that we serve and the demand for pet ownership, thankfully we're still insulated, and we're growing. We're seeing modest growth, but I think most, especially independent hospital owners would tell you it has softened, and they're seeing some alligator arms in the exam rooms of, doc, I'm not going to buy 12 months of prevention. If you're telling me I don't have to do this dental and I can keep my $450 in my pocket or whatever that price point is, I'm going to push that till next year. That's definitely happening, but general demand is still there, and pet owners are still seeking care. They're still coming in, which is what attracted private equity to our industry are all those things. But I think, nobody's panicking, but we're still trying to decide, are we shorthanded? And now that we're entering the fall and winter, of course, everything is seasonal and geographical, but a lot of clinics that have been trying to hire an associate or technician all summer, they're probably going to wait or just not put a big push, and we're going to ride out the winter. Those kind of things are starting to go on because it is softening a hair. Nobody's panicking, but it's softened for sure.
Very interesting.
This has all been great, Jimmy. I mean, James, I don't know if you agree, but I mean, there's just nothing like, we can sit here and talk and we can bring in guests, but the guys who are on the front lines, like Jimmy, just have such a pulse of where everything's at, because they're in the weeds of it every day.
Absolutely. There's really nothing better. Can I add?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Well, thank y'all. It's fun. It's fun to be in and out every day and watch different people succeed and do it differently. But on those lines, something I'm picking up on a lot more that I think corporately owned practices, independent, we really need to be more savvy and find more ways to make pet care affordable with other means right now. My clinics that are tapping into pet insurance, to care credit, and I don't know if you guys know, care credit is, I'm sure y'all do, but it's big on the dental side is too. People are used to care credit. You guys have heard of, what are these retail guys offering nowadays? What's it called? It's pay in 3-month installments.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Dick's Sporting Goods, there's a button on the screen that says, pay today or split this into 3 equal payments. My clinics that are tapping into those help my client afford this total care package that I presented, as opposed to, well, let's scratch a couple things off the estimate. I think we're going to need to get a lot more savvy in the next 12, 18 months to help pet owners afford the care that they want. They just, their discretionary income is taking a hit right now. And so I'm seeing clinics that are tapping into that we're seeing the care credits and those other offerings rising in the number. It used to be that was between like 2 and 5%, maybe, probably represented in the payment of services in the hospital. Those numbers are growing. Pet insurance is on the rise. There's other ways to offer affordability, and I think we need to get savvy on those things. Or I'm also seeing a resurgence of wellness plans. That is a debate for another day, but it has a place out there for some pet owners. And the clinics of mine that are kind of open to and/or exploring those things, I'm seeing that they're seeing clients are kind of asking for that. Kind of been interesting to watch.
Definitely, we'll keep an eye on it. Travis, why don't you give us the classic final question for our guy Jimmy here?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, as we head out, Jimmy, we've kind of got a classic question that everybody gets hit. But as kind of a recap, I was just, I think a couple of quick takeaways for me was, the fact that you talked about, hey, be innovative, be flexible, and find opportunity is huge for whether you are a young veterinarian looking to, build your career. That is really important, I believe. Or if you're a hospital owner, kind of looking to grow or build your plan to exit the hospital, man, that's the best advice I've heard. But along those lines, Jimmy, there's a quote that kind of sits out there that says, everybody wants to change the world, but no one wants to change the toilet paper. So nice. We always conclude by asking the guests, which I think you said you cheated and listened ahead to some of the other episodes.
I did.
So hopefully you're probably prepared for this. Are you one of those guys who tries to sneak out without changing the toilet paper, or do you actually change the toilet paper roll?
Well, I feel the obligation to be honest and transparent with you and the audience. Back in the day, I probably snuck out a time or two. Look, things happen in there. But hey, now I share my house with a lovely wife and 3 lovely daughters. And if I were to exit the aircraft without putting everything back in its proper storage position, I'd have a riot on my hands in my house. So I have fully devoted myself to replacing that toilet paper, Trav. That's a key in my house. You could get beat up in my house if you don't do that.
That's probably a little bit different in your house being with 3 little girls, and our house 3 little boys.
Promise you it is. I promise you it is.
Well, along those lines of, if we do have some listeners that want to change the world, I think you've given a lot of advice, and maybe I stole your thunder, Jimmy, but what's the one piece of advice that you would give to a veterinarian who wants to change the world?
Can I give 2? I don't want to keep talking your ears off, but can I give 2? And you know what?
We'll allow it just this once.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Here's a piece of advice that I feel like my veterinary friends, some are better than others, but go out there and get lunch with your colleagues down the street, around the corner, across town. We're veterinarians and clinics. We've been on these little bitty islands in our communities, and I love working with veterinarians. The hearts, the MacGyver skills that I get to watch on a daily basis always just is really cool to see. But sometimes, to their detriment, they know the best way, and they may not be interested in, someone else's way. I would just love to see more collaboration, getting together, sharing, best practices, whatever it is. I'd love to see them do that more. It's just hard. Our industry's hard. We're busy. These guys don't get home till 7:30. When are you going to do it? I don't know. Grab lunch with a colleague, share what you're seeing in the market, look for ways to help each other out here. And then I'll slide in the second one, never burn a bridge. This industry, as you guys know, is extremely tiny, for better or worse. And it's always nice when you know, I mean, shoot, Travis, you and I have known each other for over a decade, and James, we've crossed paths in the industry, and whether it's a veterinarian, an owner, a corporate group, a company, industry rep, you know, just always keep those communication lines open. It tends to benefit us all when we do it that way.
I love it. Jimmy, it's been awesome having you, man. Thanks again for taking the time. I think this has been an awesome episode. I think there's a lot of good nuggets in here for our listeners. So much appreciation to you, my friend. This has been the Vet Worthwhile podcast. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks again for tuning in to the Vet Worthwhile podcast. You can find us online at signaturefd.com/signature-veterinary. And then our ask would be, if you found this episode valuable, just think of one friend or colleague that you think would enjoy the content, and just please share. So thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Travis York is the owner of 3-in-1 Vet Advisors and a partner of Signature FD. 3-in-1 Vet Advisors is a veterinary consulting and strategic planning firm of which Signature FD has no involvement or ownership. James Yost is a partner and wealth advisor at Signature FD. Signature FD is an investment advisor registered with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. 3-in-1 Vet Advisors and Signature FD are not affiliated. Mr. York provides all non-investment advisory services through 3-in-1 Vet Advisors. The opinions of the guests and the contents of this podcast are intended to be educational only and should not be relied upon as investment, tax, business, or planning advice. You should consult with a professional advisor prior to taking any course of action that may impact you or your business.